Welcome. My name's Kevin, and this is the Bible Artist Podcast. I believe the arts can give us fresh eyes to see the significance of the Bible and the beauty of the gospel. I also believe the Bible can provide the arts with complex characters and stories with profound insight into the human condition. I've been a fan of Bible art for most of my life, and so over the past few years, I've been exploring popular biblical adaptations and encouraging Christian communities to discuss and engage with the arts. For additional resources, including Bible studies, reviews, character studies, and more, visit thebibleartist.com. If you like today's video, please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, or maybe even consider supporting what I'm doing through Buy Me a Coffee. My friend Kyle Cowgill's here with me once again, and today we'll be briefly touching on kind of the recent controversy involving The Chosen and Angel Studios, but we'll mostly be debriefing season 4, kind of thinking a little more big picture about the stuff that happened this season, key topics, themes, character developments, that kind of thing. Note, if you have not seen Chosen Season 4, we will be discussing spoilers, so you might want to hold off and wait till you've seen everything to enjoy this conversation. But first, Kyle, have you been tracking at all with the news involving Angel Studios and The Chosen and all this stuff that's been going on?
And I find that stuff distracting. I don't care. I don't care about behind the scenes gossip and rumors. I never have. Now, tell me what's going on.
Okay, I'll do it real brief, but I have a very similar outlook, so we don't have to get into it very much. But essentially, the release of season 4 through streaming has been delayed because there's some sort of behind the scenes conflict between Angel Studios, which was kind of part of the funding mechanism for The Chosen starting out, and The Chosen team itself. I don't know all the details. I'm sure there are people who have dug into it more. I think there is an article in Newsweek that gives like a little bit more of the stuff that's going on, at least as far as what's publicly known. Dallas has said that he can't publicly divulge a whole lot, which, is just standard advice whenever you're involved in something where there's a legal matter. And so I've basically just been telling people, like, it's not really our place to get into a lot of speculation and trying to make ourselves like armchair judges. And it shouldn't really like distract us from enjoying the show itself. And it sounds like, Kyle, you're probably in a pretty similar point of view.
I have no appetite for any of the sentences you just uttered. Just zero appetite.
Well, yeah, like I said, I sometimes cover like these kinds of things just because like people are interested in it, and
I'm being kind of facetious. I'm sure there's some genuine issues there or whatnot. And it's affecting people because they want to see this show, and it's probably delaying that. So had I not seen it in theaters, I would be bummed out to hear that. I'd want them to get it fixed, get it handled. And my dad has great advice for this sort of thing. So there were some members of the family they had to figure out some legal issues regarding land ownership between some brothers. Not my dad and his brothers. It was another part of the family. And it caused all kinds of friction. And you hear this sort of thing all the time. My dad's opinion is just give it all to charity. Just so Dallas, if you're listening, just give it all to Angel Studio. Just whatever, lay it all down, and then get the show up. Don't listen to my advice. Just don't listen to my advice at all. Sorry. You can probably cut that out. That was such a lame joke, or keep it in. Nobody likes it.
I'm sure there's some sort of wisdom in there for someone who's watching.
Right, someone's going through that exact scenario, and they'll give all their property over to charity now. That's good.
Yep.
It won't be me. I won't do that, but you could do that.
Maybe the Holy Spirit is, just guiding you, Kyle.
Yeah. No, I'll fight
life.
my own mother tooth and nail for every last penny. So I'll never do that. I'm getting mine. Sorry. I'm being dumb.
We'll leave kind of the para controversy, the behind the scenes controversy, which, a lot of that is just speculation and rumor and kind of gossip to begin with. And we'll focus on like season 4 itself. We can return back to the death of Rama stuff because that is like, it's a controversy, but it's actually, part of the content of the show, which I find much more interesting to discuss. Sorry, before we move on, did you have something else?
Yeah, you had mentioned other controversies.
Mm-hmm.
Were we going to skip over those controversies? Because some of them I might not be aware of, and I am actually curious what they are.
Oh, just like other ones from the past.
Like what?
I mean, there's nothing. This is the main one that's going on right now. Is the stuff between
The
Angel
Angel Studios?
and
Yeah.
the Chosen team. I mean, from previous seasons, there's a controversy over when Jesus said, "I am the law of Moses." That was
Oh,
controversial
yeah.
because there's a line in the Book of Mormon that has that same phrase, "I am the law of Moses," but
Yeah.
it's in a very different sense. And yeah, I wrote kind of an
Yeah,
article on that.
what I have an initial thought on that. But I'm curious what you think of that.
Yeah, I think that what Jesus said, like if you actually look at the context of what he says in The Chosen, it's completely like standard theology. Jesus is basically saying,
Yeah.
the Pharisee says, like, watch out, Jesus, if you keep talking like this, we're gonna have to stone you according to the law of Moses. And Jesus says, I am the
Yeah.
law of Moses, meaning he is the lawgiver. He's the one who, like the ultimate standard of justice and truth and all that, which
Yeah.
all Christians believe Jesus is.
Yeah.
He's the one who gave the law to Moses, is basically what he's saying. It's difficult when you have obviously when Jesus says, I am the law of Moses, like that's a metaphor. And so you have to
Yeah.
pay attention to like what he's actually saying in context. And I get how like some people, they heard it. And, if you have, depending on kind of your theological scheme, you might think that it's saying something kind of funky about Jesus and salvation and things like that, but that's not in context like what he was actually saying. So I don't know. That was
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have thoughts on it?
No problem with that line
Yeah.
at all. It was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
And if people were mad that there's a similar phrase in the Book of Mormon, it's just, man, Dallas, if you're listening, I'll speak to you. Us Christians online can be so sensitive. And I hope that you never let any of us affect your thoughts because we will get mad over anything.
Yep.
Anything.
Yep.
Yeah, I had heard about that pride flag controversy.
Yep.
That's another one where I'm like, how are people mad?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, like how do people? I just don't. Nobody can judge the hearts except God. That one's beyond me too. I don't understand how that was ever a controversy, but
yeah, right. I don't even want to bother kind of wasting space discussing that one because it's another one of those ones where it's like it has nothing to do with like the actual content of the show itself. It's just
nothing.
People like picking out little details and So
right.
Okay, so kind of leaving that behind, returning back to the Rama discussion, do you have anything else? Like, we've had a couple of weeks to just mull it over. We've gotten feedback from previous videos. Even Dallas, we appreciated some of your comments. Do you have any additional thoughts on it, or are you kind of still in a similar place from last time?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'll summarize what my thoughts are on it, which is one, I love that they were so bold as to do it and tackle a really difficult issue head on. I love that they had the real estate to go for it like that they weren't constrained into just, and it's great if you're constrained to just sticking in the Gospels and what you think, but in the context of this show, they can take swings, and they did, and I love that. The only thing is, if you take a swing that big, you better hit that ball, and I don't think that the execution afterwards lived up to the decision to do it. I don't think they pull it off. I don't think the way that they had Jesus handle it was satisfying. It didn't seem like the Jesus of the Bible to me, the way he handled it. Thomas, I can talk about it later. I'll leave that to later, but I thought it was unsatisfying, the events after Rama's death. I didn't think that they landed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's fair.
I
guess I'll because sometimes people will reply to our videos and they'll speak as if we have like a singular voice. So
Oh,
maybe I
Kevin
should.
disagrees with everything I say, and he should, because
No,
Kevin's
not.
really smart, and I'm flying off the hip.
No, I mean we do have a lot of areas of agreement, but we are
Yeah.
distinct people, and like this is especially true when it comes to things that are like artistic shows, movies, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like what will work for one person doesn't always work for another person, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean that there aren't like objective things that we can talk about. But maybe just some things strike people differently, or various different things like that. So
Yeah.
I'll just say for me, yeah, I mean your positive points on the front end, I agree with those things definitely. Like glad that they took the big swing. Glad that they also like kind of did this imaginative thing to kind of get
Mm.
us thinking in different ways, and get us like kind of digging into what would Jesus do in this kind of situation.
Yeah.
I think I was more okay with the execution than you were.
Hmm.
I would agree that there probably are points where they could have tweaked and improved a line here, or maybe removed certain things. I actually enjoyed how it played into Thomas's character throughout the last couple episodes, and some of the stuff with Jesus didn't bother me as much. Like it was difficult, but it wasn't beyond. Like it didn't feel totally alien for me. I know, we had that one
Yeah.
exchange over, would Jesus kind of have been this hands off with Thomas. And
Yeah.
I think it is a tricky call to figure out like what exactly Jesus would have done in that situation. Um, and
What do you
they,
think he would have done? Let me put you on the spot. Let's say this is your show and you have this idea. How would you have Jesus?
yeah. So are we starting like pre-Lazarus resurrection, post-resurrection? Like
Yeah,
where are we?
basically, Rhema just gets it from the back, chop, sword through, she's dead.
Mm,
And now, Kevin, you take
mm.
over writing duties.
That's a really good question. Yeah. So I don't know if I personally would have gone in the direction that they did and like tried to do it. So even though
Yeah.
like I like that they tried that out, like if I was creating the show, it's just not probably like the way I would have like thought to have done that, which isn't like a criticism. It's just like that's not the way that my creative mind works. So I can't really re-engineer it, at least on the spot. Like maybe if I sat down, I could try to work something out, but on the spot, it's
Right.
not
I'd put you
exactly
on the
flowing
spot
for
big
me.
time.
Just because it's probably not where I would have gone with it
Right. My
myself.
bad. I did put you on the spot there. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's a good question. I should try to think of it sometime, but I haven't tried to sit down and re-engineer it, or try to do my own
Right.
version. But okay, yeah, it sounds like we're still in kind of similar-ish places from last time. Maybe picking up on additional things, or a little changes here and there.
I thought of an idea.
Mm-hmm.
This might have been fun. All right. So Rhema's dead. Everybody loved Rhema in the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
The show unfortunately bypassed that, and it was like
Mm,
they had
yeah.
some people mourning for Rhema early on, but it very quickly became it only mattered because of how it affected Thomas. But Mary was a really good friend of Rhema,
Yeah.
and there was other people who were really good friends of hers. And I was thinking one way they could have explored Jesus being a leader in his disciples for his disciples when something
Mm,
this massive happens
mm,
is maybe show different leaderships from one person to another. Like maybe for one person, a more direct approach helps get
mm.
them on track. I know I'm kind of repeating myself from last time, but like, hey, the kingdom of heaven is at
Yep.
hand. We know this is horrible, but bad things are going to happen. I need you on board now.
Mm,
Like get your mind off of yourself and your
yeah.
own troubles and get your mind on heaven. Because
Mm,
Jesus says stuff like that. He
yeah.
says stuff like that in scripture. And then another person might have a more sensitive disposition, and Jesus
Mm,
comes to them like a mother hen. And so you kind of show Jesus
mm,
giving like a similar message to people in different ways, showing different
mm,
ways of leading. The one thing I just don't think they should have done is have Jesus be passive about it. Okay. That's the one thing that it showed poor leadership to me. It showed a disconnect, and it just made Jesus seem less awesome, than he did in prior seasons. That's my take on that.
I definitely like your idea of seeing more of the wider impact of her death, because I get that they had that big scene in episode 4 or that sequence, and then I assume kind of one of the reasons why they had that big the montage time jump thing was so that they could kind of avoid having to dwell on her death for as long as they probably would need to, if they.
I know, but then they still do all season anyway. It's still the main thing all season. That's just what I mean with it's such a big swing that you have to be super careful to make sure you land that. But I get it that to a lot of people they did land it. So I might be a minority opinion here. So
no, but I get what you're saying as far as if you're gonna do this, they kind of double down, but you're saying they needed to triple down or quadruple down and really make this really a key focus of the season, not just for Thomas,
right? Because
for everybody.
Right. Well, I think that once you do that, it is the key focus of the season, especially because they funnel everything through that. The death of Lazarus isn't about, or the resurrection of Lazarus isn't about the resurrection of Lazarus. It's about how Thomas is going to see it. So it's you're already committed to it. Yeah. I don't know. just my thoughts. Then they're still developing it into future seasons. I feel like there are so many roads you could have gone down, not just those ones I just mentioned. There's so many ways you could have taken it, and the one that you don't take is passivity. Okay. That's my
I see now. That's kind of one of your main kind of sticking points with it is Jesus, specifically kind of Jesus's leadership style through that sequence.
Well, it's also just talking screenwriting. I may think that Jesus wouldn't have done what they show him doing in reality. I don't think Jesus would have handled it like that. But regardless of that, you and I know just as a screenwriter, your main character is engaging if they are making decisions that drive the story forward. If they're not standing back and things are happening around them and they have a passive role in it. Now, Jesus had an active role in a lot this season. Yeah. But it was unappealing to me that he didn't take an active role in this major storyline. Yeah.
No, that's some legit criticism, and I feel like there are some points there that I'm persuaded by, even though I still wasn't maybe quite as down on it. I do like some of the things that you're saying, and I feel like that could have been incorporated to make it a much stronger narrative. I do like, I feel like there are going to be some interesting things that sprout from this. But that could have, with your advice, that could have still come from it. So,
and maybe they'll land it super hard and I'll be singing his praise. And maybe you'll be saying, you know what? They never should have killed Rama. And I'll be like, Kevin, how could you ever think that even once?
Yeah. I mean, it's good to realize, with a show like this, things are still developing, and but
it's an awesome show.
People in the comments realize we're offering critiques. I mean, the two of us we are very, very junior aspiring screenwriters, nothing compared to the people who are working on the Chosen. So we are very humble and recognizing there's so much that they have done that we would not be able to do. But this is part of our learning process too. It's just looking at the show, analyzing, figuring out what's working for us, what's not, and trying to be creative and come up with stuff that we think could have made it even better. So it's not coming from let's trash the Chosen. We're just learning and thinking together. So.
But also, we are vastly superior screenwriters, and Dallas should just hand the show over to us. and everything would be better, Dallas. No, you're absolutely right. We're super fans of the show, so all the criticism it's just coming from a place of love.
Okay, well, let's transition and think more. So, like, transition away from like the decision to have Rama die and more think about how Rama's death plays into kind of a larger theme or focus on death and loss and grief in season 4. So, what are some of the ways that you saw death or grief, some things like that, showing up throughout the season? And do you have any thoughts on kind of what the show is trying to do with that? What it may be saying? Yeah. Any kind of initial thoughts that come to you?
My first thought is whatever I say is going to be about 1/10 as smart as what you're going to say. So can I actually bounce that back to you? Because I feel like you'll have much better stuff on this.
Well, I'll share a little bit, and then you can always feel free to jump on. So, I mean, obviously, as far as death, there are the 3 major deaths of the season: John the Baptist at the beginning, Rama kind of around the middle, and then Lazarus at the end. I think it's interesting that they kind of made each of those deaths slightly different. So, like John the Baptist, it's he knows what's going to happen. He's like prepared for it. He's kind of he's very cognizant of what he's doing. Rama, it's kind of a freak thing that happens, but it's happening kind of as part of her participating in the ministry of Jesus. And then Lazarus, it's not someone like persecuting someone because of Jesus. It's just the brokenness of this world and sickness and that kind of thing. So I think it's interesting that they, chose like a little bit different situations. And yeah, so with John the Baptist, because he is like forewarned about it, we get to kind of see more of his attitude going into his death. So, he's thinking about how he's going to the wedding supper. We get to see like a little bit of his like gallows humor and just like his how he is kind of prepared for what he's about to face. And then with Rama, we don't get to see her. She doesn't have too much forewarning. She does get like a little bit of time between when she gets stabbed and when she actually dies. So we do get to see her kind of give that final bit of encouragement to Thomas to stick with Jesus. But with her, we get a lot more kind of the grief coming out of it because it's so sudden.
Kevin, you just reminded me of something. That's why Thomas sticks with Jesus, huh? It's because Rama said, stick with Jesus. And if she hadn't said that, maybe he would have been out. Okay, sorry, keep going. I just had forgotten she said that for some reason.
Yeah, and there's also some interesting things woven in with Thomas and Rama. If you go back to season 1, episode 4, when we get introduced to them, the whole theme of like time first gets brought up there, and also sticking with Jesus is actually kind of a theme that shows up like from the very beginning of their storyline. Rama's like I think we just need to like go with him,
right?
Whereas Thomas is even then kind of struggling over like thinking about the logic of it, and so like they're definitely kind of carrying on some of their storylines. Anyway, sorry, back to the death theme.
Yeah, sorry.
And then with Lazarus, it's just kind of the brokenness of this world. And so Lazarus and Rama are interesting because they're both, situations where Jesus could have healed, but doesn't. But then, with Lazarus, he uses it to do the resurrection thing. Rama, he doesn't. Yeah, so I don't know. Those are just like observations at this point. I'm not saying anything about the message. I think with John, we're trying to, the focus is on like how we can kind of overcome death by trusting in Jesus even when we are approaching death. So it's not about like Jesus getting us out of death. It's just we can face death because we know we've got something better ahead of us, and that's what John's death is like hammering home. John was ready. It's sad, but even the disciples are able to move on from it relatively quickly because they knew that John was prepared. They knew what he was about. So like there's kind of that distinct type of death and the type of mourning that goes with it. Um,
Right.
and that they set up there in that in episode 3. Wait, yeah, episode 2, when they're mourning John's death. Jesus talks about how different people mourn differently. There's different situations, how we mourn, and then we get to see a couple other types of mourning throughout the season. So with Rima, it's a lot more confusing why Jesus didn't act, and I guess they're kind of trying to bring home, yeah, with Rima, like Jesus has purposes that we don't understand. He's calling us to be able to trust him, even when he doesn't provide us with kind of the healing that we're looking for. And then with Lazarus, because we have that background of Rama, he's able to show, like, even if he doesn't give us what we want in the moment, like eventually there is kind of this hope of resurrection, which he kind of brings that hope a little sooner than when most of us will actually get it. So those are
Right.
some initial thoughts, some ramblings. Share some of your thoughts. I've been monologuing for a little bit here.
No, I enjoyed what you had to say. Yeah. Honestly, I wish I had more to contribute to. I'm being a bad podcast host here. That's such an issue. That's such a difficult issue to parse, just in life too. And a show about Jesus that includes so much. The Bible has so much death in it. And we as Christians can't make heads or tails of a lot of it. And that confusion is part of the spirit of the whole thing, right? That's like part of the call is we're not going to understand it, and it might not be good. There might not be anything good that comes out of it at all for like us or the people in the person's life or whatnot. And we're called to faith through it, and that we'll see them up in glory one day. So it's a tough issue to tackle. And the 3 examples that you gave, I thought that they executed, with the exception of the Rama one, I guess, but I thought they executed them pretty well.
Yeah.
Like the John the Baptist death was beautiful, and how he sees the golden light out there. And, you kind of feel like that might be how it is for you if you're aware that you're about to die. We've heard other stories from martyrs who seem to have had other experiences, or we even have loved ones who have reported these kinds of things when they approach the end. So that one seemed believable, very touching. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that was so many words with just so little impact. There was just nothing in what I just said.
No, I appreciate. One other thought that came to mind as you were kind of talking about just the complexity of it all. One other thing I think they are trying to do with season 4 is show how Mary has a line to this effect. She says something along the lines of like, how like, like sorrow and joy like mingle, or something like that. How like I feel like this is like a pushback against the typical like bad Christian movie where like everything is like positive.
Right.
What
Super
the show is trying to do is show like it's also a pushback against like maybe a certain type of like secular movie where like everything is like crappy and like just like horrible.
Right.
In reality, there's really, really bad stuff going on, and there's really, really good stuff going on, and a lot of times they're happening at like the same time. Like I know
Ain't that the
I've talked to
truth?
people where the baby's born on the same day that grandpa died, or like there's just stuff that it all kind of comes together, and God is working kind of in the midst of all of that. So I think that's another, like and see that throughout the season with like on the same at the same moment that they get the news that John died, like they also get the news that they got the oil contract or whatever, and they get the news that Thomas and Mary and Rama are gonna get married. So joy and sorrow are kind of constantly coming at us at the same time.
Right. Yeah, build up treasures in heaven, not on earth where moth and rust destroy. I mean, there's even a little something to that of, even our loved ones are they're gonna be destroyed. Not saying don't have them as your treasure, of course.
maybe we can move on from the death and the grief stuff, and hit on just like a couple other themes, or things that were kind of focuses for season 4, because there were like a few different big topics going on throughout the season. So
Yeah.
one of the other big ones that I noticed coming up time and again was kind of a question of like, what is the true nature of like power, authority, status, glory?
Right.
I'll throw that to you, and then I can come back. Um,
Like instances in the show where those themes were touched on.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I thought for true power and status and glory, these are the notes I wrote. That was touched on in the show through the Gaia subplot. I felt power, as well as Claudia and Joanna talking about what would it be like to actually believe in something like the Jews do, yet they have all the power and status or whatnot. Claudia, oh yes, oh, and then Joanna getting out of the. What do they call that thing again? That carriage? They have a fun name for it.
Is it a leader?
Yeah,
Or
a litter or something.
Litter,
It's a
litter.
litter. Yeah, getting out of that to go hold the palm
Litter.
branch, shuffling. Oh, cat, Batman. Mine isn't. Oh, mine's over there. I'll show you Ruprecht. There, that's Ruprecht. He.
Like, why are they showing each other their cats?
That's Ruprecht thinks that they should have killed Ramus sooner. That was his opinion. He's a real hater. Yes, those were what I thought for power, status, and glory, what the show touched on. Faith in Jesus' teaching versus pragmatism and cynicism. These are the notes I had for that. The scene where you walk the extra mile for the Romans was touched on, following Jesus' teaching versus, what just makes sense to you. Like that, obviously, eye for an eye makes sense to us, but turn the other cheek made sense to God. And
oh wait,
okay, go on.
Are you done with that one, or I can?
Yeah.
Can,
I had one.
Sure.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, you can go for if you have more on that one. Go.
The only other one I had was the parable where Jesus talks about the hired laborers, and the disciples didn't understand that, and Jesus said, "You're thinking about it from an earthly perspective. You've got to think about it from a heavenly one." And that touched on Jesus' teaching versus our own understanding. Practical, pragmatic. Okay, what were you going to say?
Yeah, well, I just had some stuff on the true power and glory stuff too, but here I'll start with the faith in his teaching, and then I'll circle back. So I think the Mary Martha story also hits on that, as far as like Mary is focused on like wanting Jesus's teaching.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
Martha, she's pragmatic in like a more like kind of humble way. Like she's just trying to care for Jesus, but she is focused more on like what needs to get done as opposed to like just focusing on the teaching. And that's kind of one of the key things that they were bringing home there. I feel like also like all the Pharisees are kind of like the embodiment of this kind of pragmatism as they're like thinking through what to do about Jesus. Like they're not Shmuel is thinking about, is he the one or not? But most of these religious leaders that we see throughout the show, they're not really like trying to dig into like the truth of the matter, especially like the high priest at the end of the season, where he's like, we gotta kill him so that everybody else is okay. Like, they're just trying to figure out what will work in order to keep us in power, in order to keep ourselves safe, as opposed to like the trusting enough to follow Jesus, even if it's not going to work out well for them, or even if it's going to be difficult. And and I feel like Yusuf is actually kind of interesting there, because he's a little bit the Sanhedrin by using his dad's wealth or whatever, but he's doing it for kind of out of like his faith and out of his desire to advocate. So circling back to the power and status and glory stuff, because I think it comes up so you mentioned like Gaius. I think that's definitely a big point there. I also just wanted to mention with that kind of like the embodiment of pragmatism too. I didn't mention that.
Right,
We see
right,
him
right.
kind of
Yeah.
like in his conversations with like Simon Z, in his like some of his
Yes.
frustrations over Mary pouring out the expensive ointment, in like how
Yes.
he gets frustrated with he wants to do his money collection scheme because he's like very pragmatic. He's thinking about like
Right.
how can we get the stuff that we need, and he doesn't want to have
Mm-hmm.
to like trust God like Jesus is teaching him to do. And then like
Yeah.
his one friend is like trying to get him to focus on even more pragmatism, like how do you take care of yourself, not just like Jesus, and he gives
Yeah.
into that. But Judas, like he's also kind of focused on like the wrong type of glory, especially in like episode 7. He's talking to one of the characters about like how he wants to see the kingdom, in its glory, and that comes up in episode 8 with Shmuel as well. Like he's got this vision of like the glory of the kingdom of Israel and what it could look like. But he gets challenged at one point. It's either like Nathaniel or Thaddeus asks him or suggests that like Jesus is the one who gets to define what true glory looks like.
Yeah.
Which, long term, what we're going to see is like Jesus' type of glory is not like glory by like dominating your enemies, but it's the glory of
Mm-hmm.
suffering on the cross, and being lifted up in that way. And that kind
Yeah.
of circles back to, or connects back to Jesus' view of the true nature of like authority and leadership. It comes not through lifting yourself up like the Gentiles, but it comes through lowering yourself and serving, and becoming the least. Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know. Those are some of my thoughts on a couple of those themes.
Great.
Are there
Yeah.
any
It was
other?
all on point.
Huh? Are there any other
No,
topics
I
that
think
you?
no, none. I think you nailed them. Yeah, there's none that I could think of that hit on that. I guess the next one you had written in our episode notes
Mhm.
document was God's ways versus our understanding,
Mhm.
and that there was a little overlap with a nuance. And so there's some, but let me see. I think you might have touched everything that I was gonna say there too. Talking about faith in Jesus versus basically God's ways versus our ways, like
Mhm.
having faith in his ways, not ours. They touched on some questions that the disciples might have had
Mhm.
that showed they were trying to wrestle things in their own mind rather than just trust in Jesus.
Mhm.
Like them bringing up questions like, why didn't Jesus raise Lazarus, heal
Mhm.
him from across town, like in a second, like he did with the
Yeah.
other people? Um, you know, uh, and I'm not saying they were wrong to ask that question. Of course, they were going to ask that question, but
Mhm.
it goes to show a little bit of that. You're
Mhm.
wrestling with your own understanding of things rather than just letting God be God. And
Mhm.
I don't know. That was an example I thought of. What do you think of
Mhm.
that?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I
Yeah.
feel like there are a couple of those questions that came up. You're right. Yeah, and I feel like they also
Yeah.
just were trying to kind of bring home the gap between our perspective and God's perspective. So like some of it was through like questions like that, things that we just can't answer. I also think of like David, when his son doesn't get healed,
Yeah.
and he doesn't know why God heals sometimes and why he doesn't. But then there's also kind of like the difference in perspective, over things like some of the stuff like things like power or things like um, status. So like Jesus talks to his mother Mary in episode 4, I think, and he's just talking about how the disciples, they're just not getting it. Like they're focused on all these
Right.
like small things, and they're not seeing like the big picture of what I'm here for. So there's a
Yeah.
little bit of an emphasis on the difference between its ways and perspective or understanding there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. I think you smacked that one.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess switching gears from the themes, do you want to talk any bit about any character development from season 4? Maybe starting out, yeah. How do you feel like season 4 did, kind of juggling? They had a lot of different characters. How do you feel like it did in juggling all the different characters?
Thought it was hit and miss. There were some that I
Mm,
really liked,
yeah.
some that went really well for a part of the series and then petered out. Haha,
Mm,
pun intended. I didn't mean it, but now I'll own it. Uh, and then some that I just didn't think were great, that I
mm,
would have wanted more from. Really loved Mary Magdalene this season, even though maybe there's not like a defined arc I could tell you she
hmm
had. She was just a very wonderful presence in the season, I thought. So I don't know. That's not really character development. Gaius, of course, that was probably my favorite,
hmm
but that was really moving to me.
Yep.
So Gaius would be in my number one spot. I really like what they did with Shmuel.
hmm Yep.
Uh, that he does turn back to be unbelieving.
hmm
And it shows a character who wrestles with the light and
Yep.
decides ultimately he doesn't want it because he has his own little light.
mm
That's not the true light.
hmm
He relies too much on his own understanding.
hmm
So I really liked what they did with Shmuel. Yusuf was cool. I like Yusuf. There were so those are some good, Peter and Matthew early on,
mm
fire. Like that
Yeah.
whole
Yeah. That
forgiveness
was
thing
really
was
good.
one of the highlights of the season. So I loved what Jesus had to say about forgiveness. That's one thing, one strength of The Chosen. Oh my goodness. Like Jesus, to my understanding, never says in scripture, we don't ask forgiveness or we don't
Yeah.
apologize so that we can be forgiven. We apologize so that we can repent. I don't
hmm
think Jesus ever says that exact thing, but that's so the heart of Jesus. And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
like little things like that kind of embedded themselves in me
hmm
and I'll remember them forever, so they've helped me as a Christian and as a person. So
hmm
huge strength to the show, like having that wisdom and that quality of writing to do that. So, there's a couple I wish would have, I was thinking about it. It's Atticus. I really like Atticus,
hmm
and he plateaued this season.
Yeah.
He might have been plateauing actually for a few seasons. Uh, but I like him. I don't know where they're going with him, and I
hmm
keep wanting more development from him, but they
Yeah.
might just be playing the long game, and
Yeah.
at the end it'll be awesome. So incomplete grade for Atticus.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I felt like after the Matthew and Peter forgiveness episode, there wasn't much for them to do. And Peter, those two characters have been such highlights of the show from the beginning. And
hmm
my thoughts. I think the Rama thing sucked the oxygen out of the story, and they
hmm
basically had nothing to do except like Peter be like, hey, don't get too close to Jesus now, or hey, form a line. He's like kind
hmm
of being a bouncer for most of the show after that. So
I did like
I
with
was,
Matthew. I did like with Matthew the the little bit of Judas intrigue. I would have liked more of it. But I thought it was
oh yeah,
interesting.
yeah, that was good. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
good. You're right. Okay, I liked the Judas. I
Like
kind of liked the Judas development.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I kind of
I
liked it. It
liked
was
I liked
okay.
Matthew's part of it. Um,
I liked Matthew's part in it. Some of Judas's stuff felt a little bit forced. I don't know.
mhm,
The other character arc that was a little hit and miss for me this season, unfortunately, was Jesus, because the high
mm,
points were as high as they've been in the whole series,
mm,
in my opinion. Like brought tears to my eyes.
mm,
And I know I'm repeating some of the same stuff I have, but him with Gaius was so moving. Him witnessing Jesus, the image of Jesus on screen, giving some of these sermons that are in the gospel, like
mm,
I and the Father are one, and the Good Shepherd sermon. I guess those were in the same episode. There were some really powerful moments with Jesus, like really well performed. And then some of it was a little bit stickier to me, the way that they built up his main inner turmoil of the disciples not understanding what he was saying. I thought that's a tricky motivation for
mm,
Jesus to grow more and more frustrated that his disciples aren't understanding his words. You see that a little bit in scripture. So I know that they're drawing from that source, but seeing it depicted on screen, it's almost like I, as a viewer, understood why the disciples didn't understand what Jesus was saying in some of his more complicated messages, some of his parables, some of his sermons. They are hard sometimes, even for us today, to understand with all these studies. So that's it. But Jonathan Rumi did great. I hated everything about the character of Jesus this season. That's a joke. Sorry. I loved it despite those nitpicks. Some of the humor wasn't quite as on point as it was in previous seasons. Just a couple little things, but yeah, that's my big Jesus opinion.
I get what you're saying as far as like, there were some like really great moments, but maybe kind of how they all flowed together, and like the arc of it, I guess, as a whole, could have worked together better. And then like some of the specific moments along the way weren't quite as strong. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's just a little issue there for me personally in the execution, seeing it played out. It was a tough thing to do, to have this arc of Jesus be him growing more and more frustrated and on borderline desperate because he's running out of time.
Yeah.
It's a good one. It's a good idea. It's just, that's a tough one to execute. And I think they did okay at it. They didn't fail it. It wasn't bad. Yeah. I thought it could have been more satisfying.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and I suppose it probably also connects into like you weren't as satisfied with the turnout of the Thomas Rama kind of stuff, and that's
a huge part of it.
Had a huge part of it with Jesus. Yeah,
big part of his character arc this season handled. You're absolutely right. Handled that situation, and to me it was just a bunt how Jesus handled that. So you're right. It was altogether probably the least satisfying of the Jesus seasons for me, but still, I mean, it's Jonathan Rumi playing Jesus in The Chosen. It's going to be awesome. Yeah. Just not quite the sweet spot of the bat like it was for me personally in previous seasons.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally fair. Like it wasn't as much of the highlight of the show for me this season. I would agree.
Yeah.
As compared to like, you know, Jonathan Rumi's Jesus really was kind of one of the sweetest points of like season 2 or season 3.
Right.
Season 1. Yeah.
Even season 1. There's basically whatever issues you had with the show, like you didn't have any issues with Jesus in those seasons. You know, every time he was on screen, it was electric and awesome. And this was the only season where when Jesus was on screen, it wasn't always firing to me. There was a little bit. Actually, that's not true because I had some issues in season 3 with the portrayal of Jesus regarding Peter and walking on water. I thought that stuff was a misstep. It's not like it's been perfect, but by and large, it's been pretty darn good. Yeah.
I guess on my end, I had similar thoughts positively on a lot of the characters. Joanna was actually like I was surprised how much I enjoyed that. Like, she wasn't a big part,
she was
but like
great.
I thought they used her, you know, at the end of the season in a good way.
Yeah,
I like that they kind of phased out some of the from season 3. Like, you know, at the beginning of season 4, they had a little bit of the olive oil subplot just to kind of wrap things up, but they kind of like phased it out pretty quickly. I mean, like, you know, I've already shared my theory as far as like what they're doing with it. Like, I know there's a purpose of what they're going to do.
I think you're right about that. They kind of touched on that even.
But I'm glad that we're not like spending as much time on that as we did in season 3, where it kind of felt like I get that they wanted to give something for some certain characters to do in season 3. But it, like, because the plot itself wasn't very interesting, it didn't feel like it served characters back in season 3. So I'm glad that like I felt like there were less compared to season 3. I felt like there were less things where we're just kind of like introducing a plot because like we want to get this character on screen a little bit and like give them some development, even though we don't really have like much for them to actually do. Like all of the stuff that was going on made sense to me. Like that, like I didn't feel like there was like a whole lot of like there were individual things that I like parts of scenes that I think could have been cut, but I didn't feel like there was
Yeah.
like a storyline where it was like throughout the season where it was like I wish they had just like trimmed this to the bare necessity and gotten rid of most of it. So um
Right.
yeah, like I felt like
Right. That's a good
most
thing. Yeah.
yeah um and yeah, I just thought that yeah, I don't know, I don't have too much more character wise.
Yeah. I think I hit on my main points on that too. Yeah. Favorite character arcs of the season: Gaius, Matthew, and Shmuel. Even though
Hmm.
Matthew's was a little bit short.
Yeah,
Yeah. I hope season 5. Do you like basketball?
I don't actually. I mean, like,
You don't like
I don't like
basketball. Yeah.
dislike it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm kind of apathetic.
Okay. Yeah. Basketball. You want to give the ball to the best players, right?
Mm,
Let them cook.
mm,
Like Matthew. Well, actually, Jesus,
mm-hmm,
Matthew, Mary,
mm-hmm,
Peter. Give them the ball. Let them cook. I want to see more from the stars next season. I
mm-hmm,
want them to have bigger
mm-hmm,
things to do.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, Matthew, you could go hit a corner 3. You're good. You're solid at what you do, but
Yeah.
no, I actually really like Thomas. Who did I say, Thomas? You. Sorry, I'm giving you some stuff to edit. I just blundered that whole joke. Sorry, man.
I get what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I definitely agree with you. I would like to see more Matthew, because he has been one of the stronger characters throughout the show. So hopefully,
Yeah.
I mean, they definitely have a setup for a good conflict between him and Judas.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah, they do. They got some good stuff brewing.
yeah.
Yeah, Thomas surprisingly had little to do in terms of
Mm,
character arc
that's true.
after Rayma died.
That's true.
He'd actually his character arc was fairly anemic,
Yeah.
kind of like angry stares
Mm,
and then at the end he's mad, but yeah, he just didn't have that much to do
mm.
as an actor.
Yeah, that is a fair point. Like I see like the point of like not wanting to like push him through his grief process like too quickly, and so like
Right.
allowing him to kind of like bake in that for a bit.
Yeah.
But since like that was like such a overwhelming presence, to make that such a major feature of the season, but to not dig in a little bit more. I mean, they did have
Yeah.
like some of the stuff between him and Peter, but
Yeah. They did.
it would have been good. It would have been nice if he had like stuff, like you said, to do as opposed to just to kind of like continue to process what he's feeling.
Yeah. I guess the last things I want to say is I hope I haven't been too critical. I really love the show and I'm a huge fan. So I just never want to come across too negative or petty or nitpicky. I'm sure I have, but really a huge fan of the show and I can't wait for season 5.
I think something good for people to keep in mind as they're listening to us is like when you're just like going to the show to experience the show and you're not like trying to talk about it, you just like enjoy it and you let it wash over you. I think like when you're like trying to like, kind of dissect it and like trying to talk about it, you're going to see like seams and you're going to be like a little more cognizant of it. Because like no show is perfect. Like there are going to be strengths and weaknesses to every show that you find. It doesn't mean that we are, again, like we're crashing the show. It just means that like we're noticing things. We're even offering things with the hope that it'll. Dallas has listened to some of our stuff, so maybe it'll encourage him in some way. But we're not speaking these things out of like a sense of superiority. It's just things that we've noticed, some things ideas that we had that could have changed things. So, and some of these things are also just like personal to our own kind of
Right.
experience of watching. So,
Kevin, say what you really mean, man. You're defending the show. I'm the only one dogging it over here. You have measured responses and understanding. I'm here like, I watched these episodes a few weeks ago. What kind of silly thing can I say to drum up some conversation? Like, you're the one keeping it real. No, I'm just kidding. I haven't said anything I don't believe, but some of what I have said has been nitpicky.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I might watch the season again and be like,
Mm-hmm.
why did I think that was bad? I genuinely might. Like, Jesus is the portrayal by Jonathan Rumi is awesome. All season 4. Like, I'm pointing out really nitpicky things. I did want to end with something. Did you see the video that The Chosen put out on YouTube? It was a comedy video about like the
Episode
hidden
9.
episode or the missing episode. Yeah, episode 9.
I did.
Loved that. Did you saw that?
Yeah. Like it took
That
me
was
like
hilarious.
the first like one. I was like, what is going on here? Like, because I was like half watching like for the first like minute or two, and then I was like, wait, what are they saying? And then I like picked up like that it was all just a joke. Yeah. No, I thought it was pretty funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, they had to get to 88 miles an hour or whatnot. They did not take inspiration from us at all for this, but it was just showed that there was a similar sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
When they said it's like Thaddeus is going to be the one who actually betrays Judas. I think we had like some joke about that Judas was actually going to ultimately be the real Son of Man or something.
Yeah.
It was like some kind of twist, and they had a similar joke.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the Andrew's joke about them getting superpowers. I just thought that whole video was super funny.
Yeah.
And major props to them. The social media they put out is on point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, they've done a great job. Yeah,
they have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we talked about next time we may do season 5 predictions because Kyle, if you have ones, you'll definitely be free to share them. I've kind of been like constructing in my head like a rough outline of. It's not exactly like I don't like try to find out a ton of spoilers and like try to get like a sense of like this is what I think Dallas and his writing team are going to do for season 5. It's more like I have like a sense of like the parameters of the season, and I have thoughts on like this is like the general, a couple of different ways that I would potentially do season 5 if I was them. So I'd be interested in just like sharing kind of some of those thoughts, and then we can talk through them and maybe also kind of some bigger picture kind of predictions as far as like themes or characters that are going to be significant. So hopefully we'll have a chance to have that conversation soon.
Sounds great.
Batman just tried to bite me, so I guess he wants me to wrap up soon.
Wait, before we leave, okay, now that we've settled into season 4, can you rank your favorite seasons?
Oh, that's good. That's a really good question. I need to rewatch season. So I've been on my buy me a coffee. I've been going back through season 1, or I finished season 1 like right before season 4 came out, and I have a lot of appreciation for season 1. I think in some ways that's just like a natural part of a show like this. Like when you have a smaller cast, each of those like key characters, they're able to get a lot more focus. You're able to just have a lot more unity to kind of the character arc, and it is focused on some of those key characters that we've enjoyed, like Simon Peter and Mary Magdalene. So season 1 still is like one of my favorites. I know that, so I think we're deferring here, but I think season 4 might be my second favorite.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I think then season 3, and then I think season 2, but I might be off there. Like I need to give season 2 like another view, and see if I kind of reappraise it from where I am now compared to where I was at as I was watching it, and like just to appreciate it kind of on its own terms. So
well, they're all tightly bunched. They're all tightly. None of them are
it's not
way better or worse. Yeah. Here's my quick rundown. I actually really like season 2. I would go season 2 A+. Season 1, A.
Mm.
Season 3, A minus.
Mm.
Season 4, A minus, B. I'll say B plus just to have a distinction.
Yeah.
That's that would be how it would go for me. And man, season 4, like I binged season 1 through 3, right? Like furiously devoured them, and my expectations were sky high for unfairly high for season 4. So I'm bringing some of that into it. And when I rewatch season 4, I may have a completely different opinion, especially in the scope of the show. So yeah, you can tell that I feel guilty that I was so critical this whole episode because I don't want to give a bad impression. I love the show.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let us know in the comments. Like, I'd be curious. If you're watching it still at this point. I don't know. We've kind of like little trailed off a bit, but
yeah.
Let us know. I'd be curious to hear what people's what your ranking of the relative position of this seasons is, and yeah, if you have any other thoughts on themes or on the characters, your favorite character arcs, least favorite ones, or if you have predictions for season 5, let me know. May give me some ideas if we do get to season 5 predictions on our next conversation. So that's it for now. Thanks everybody for listening, and Godspeed.